Hello and welcome to the Women Engineers Pakistan's monthly webinar, everyone. Assalamu alaikum. Today's guest is one of my very dear friends, Areej Mehdi. We are here to discuss about graduate school applications for specifically centered for the USA. But before we step into that, let me give you a very quick background of Areej. Areej she graduated from Georgetown University, where she did her master's in communication, culture, and technology. She was also the recipient of the very prestigious Fulbright scholarship. Currently, she is a program manager at the Information Technology University in Lahore, where she teaches wow, this is amazing. Where she teaches the first undergraduate course on science fiction in Pakistan. If I could go back to undergrad, I would definitely be in your class, Areej, because this is something very amazing to me. Areej is also a former TEDx ambassador to Pakistan. But all of this falls short if you meet Areej in person, because she is this amazing person who is really looking out for everyone that she knows. With that, over to you, Areej.
Thank you so much, Amra. And that was such a sweet introduction, but not more because I feel like with we've interacted so much in the past because of WEP. I'm really glad to be doing this. So yeah, excited for this. Thank you for arranging this. I know it couldn't work out last time, but so we'll start off today with I was hoping in terms of graduate school, why do we even bother going in the first place?
Mhm.
But now that, in terms of graduate applications in the US, the question that I get a lot is around the idea of how to write a good statement of purpose. And sometimes what happens is that, because we know ourselves best, we know the work that we've been doing our entire lives. We try to sort of like merge all of that into one application, which is
Mhm.
not always the best option, right? So in today's sort of like session, I'm going to try um, giving you guys like tips and tricks, and in terms of what to include, what to maybe leave out, and just like how to make a better personal statement or a statement of purpose that sort of like jumps at your interviewer, your possible interviewer, and sort of like really grasps their attention.
Mhm.
So हम इसको इस तरह से structure कर लेते हैं, and then I'll also sort of like in the end, if there are any questions, Ramla, that you feel like I skipped, feel free to
Absolutely.
bring
Absolutely.
those. All right. So with the statement of purpose, एक तो सबसे पहले let's get on in terms of what is a statement of purpose. It is a critical piece of graduate school application that tells your admissions committee who you are, what your academic and professional interests are, and how you'll add value to the graduate program that you're applying to. So, in essence, it's just a big, almost like one pager that tells the admissions committee why they should pick you over 500 or 700 applications that they've received. So when you're sitting down to write your statement, of course, it's important to research the university that you're applying to and that you're writing for. A lot of times, I've seen students who come to me and say that these are some 5 universities we're interested in applying to, and then they decide to, and even if the programs are different, they try to use the same statement of purpose for all 5 programs, which is a big no-no. I would suggest that whatever university that you're applying to, do your thorough research on what the university's strong points are, what about the program, especially what makes the program special for you, how can you fit in with the program, and then work your way through the statement of purpose. And so a lot of times when you're also applying, you will get these prompts by the university themselves, who will share 3 to 4 different prompts with you in terms of how they want you to shape your statement of work. So it's important to keep those prompts in mind. Like for instance, I know for Fulbright, they have a prompt where they want you to focus on any academic work that you've done or any extracurriculars that you've done relevant to your degree. So it's important to read the question, reread it, and then keep on going back to it and saying, कि जो भी आप चीज़ include कर रहे हो अपने statement of purpose में, that is essential to being included in the statement in the first. And apart from that, I think use examples to illustrate your point. A lot of times we don't show, we just tell, right? So it's important that you show and tell. So we say something like, "Oh, I am a hardworking student. But what exactly in your experience tells the admissions committee that you're a hardworking student?" So you maybe supplement that information with, I apart from studying like full time, I also take up these extra courses that I'm interested in, that sort of like um, allow me to build my skills for something that I want to study further. And so this sort of like gives them an idea that this person is different from other students who are just maybe doing their undergraduate studies, or they aren't really excited enough to maybe learn some new skills down the line. So it's all about positioning your work. It's all about positioning whatever you've studied, and then drawing linkages and making those connections. So what graduate schools really are interested in asking is primarily your purpose in graduate study. So this means that you have thought this through before you try to answer the question. It, believe me, it shows when it looks like that you're not really clear on what you want to study. So there have been instances where students bring in such applications where uh, they're still sort of like stuck between two, three um, different courses or different schools that they want to go to, and they haven't done their proper research. So whenever you're applying for graduate school, you should really ask yourself, why do you want to go, and what is your purpose in going? Because it is a big commitment. It's about 2 years of your life that you're going to be really, allocating to studying in that environment. So, do that for yourself. Do that homework in advance. Then there's also the area of study in which you wish to specialize. So this requires that you know the field well enough to make that decision. If it's something that just sounds cool to you, or your relative is doing, don't do it just because of that. Then, of course, your future use of your graduate study. So they're interested in knowing that, let's say, after those 2 years of studying, how do you plan on using that degree? Either you want to go for even further studies like a PhD, or you want to go back to your home country and then implement that knowledge in a local context. So whatever you're thinking of, be honest, and then position it in a way that really speaks to the admissions committee. Of course, your special preparation, or everything that you've done so far. So show off your academic skills. Tell them, what you've been doing, why you're a good student, any extracurriculars that are important to um, the study that you're applying for, the course that you want to maybe take up. So use that academic background to sort of like supplement your statement. Uh, then of course there are any problems or inconsistencies in your record. So let's say if you took a gap year, or if you had a really bad semester, maybe talk about that. Use this space to tell them why it happened, how you sort of like turned that around. And always give a positive spin to it. So nobody wants to read a really bad argument or a bad rebuttal to, I had a bad year and that's it. So try to put a positive spin. Okay, sure, I had a bad year. Maybe my grades slipped here and there, but this is how sort of like turn it around, and this is why you should consider it. You can also include things like any special conditions that were not revealed elsewhere in the application, um, such as a large workload outside of school. Um, and then, of course, there's this question at the back of the admissions committee's mind, that why do you wish to attend the school? So, again, this requires that you've done your research, and not just because it's a big school like, let's say, Harvard or Oxford, and oh, I just want to go here because of the name. Don't be like that. Make it more about the program that you're applying to. That's always important. There have been instances where I've talked to students, and they would always tell me, oh, we only want to go to Harvard, and we'll only go if we get into Harvard. And that's not really a positive attitude, because graduate studies on their own are a big investment. They're a commitment to higher education, but also you becoming a better person in the process. So take that opportunity. Don't just wait for a Harvard or a Yale, accept you. So again, this statement is primarily for you to showcase your academic credentials first and foremost, and also sort of like in a narrative form that doesn't read like a bad report. Um, and I also want to use this space right now to talk about what's the difference between a personal statement and a statement of purpose. These are two different things. Now, mostly graduate studies, when you're applying for graduate studies, schools ask you for a statement of purpose, which is what we are talking about right now. But sometimes, for scholarship purposes, they might ask you to supplement this information with a personal statement, and that's a different thing. A personal statement is more about your work or yourself as a person, So it's more about your background and what drives you and your passions and what makes you want to apply for graduate studies. So it's not as much your academic work as it's them being introduced to you as a person on paper. Right. So now we've. Do you think this sort of like explains this enough, Kamla? Do you want me to sort of like talk more about
Maybe
the
a
state?
little more would be nice because I think this may confuse people. A lot of people still consider the personal statement as being the exact same thing as the
As a
purpose.
person.
I've seen people use the same sort of format in both and just change the words and it becomes redundant. With
Mhm.
people do not realize that ये दो बहुत मुख्तलिफ चीजें हैं and that is not what let's say the scholarship committee is not asking for the exact same thing. They're asking for something different. Maybe shed a little bit more light about what makes them distinctly different.
Great. Right. So yeah, I agree. I think that is definitely a problem. And थोड़ा सा मैं इसको इस तरह भी explain करती हूँ. Anybody here who is interested in applying for a Fulbright, let's say, they might come across this situation where they have to produce two different sets of statements. So one would be a personal statement again, which is more about, let's say, any challenges that you've experienced, and so it gives them an overview of your personality, of you as a possible candidate for that scholarship. Um, and then your statement of purpose is something your admissions committee looks at to judge if you have the right credentials to be a part of this degree, or if you qualified enough to be given admission in this university. So there, I understand it can be confusing, but there are definitely differences to these. And again, that's why I suggest that every time you sit down to write something of this sort, always look at the prompts that you're given. A lot of times the tool is right there in front of you. So it's good to sort of like keep on rereading the questions, underline any important words that you feel like you might miss, and then really look at what they want you to answer. It doesn't, make any sense for you to answer to a question that's not there. So make sure that you understand the question really well. Now, in terms of let's say person statement, I think it's important that you sort of like try answering this question, which is, now how do the challenges from my past connect to my future career? Let's say. So it's giving them an overview of anything that you've experienced in the past, anything that makes you who you are, and how you sort of like want to take that along to what you perceive your future career to be. So your experience challenges could be anything from, let's say, war or a divorce, or living living in poverty. So these are challenges, right? And so many more things. So every one of us has our own set of challenges that we experience, and we can use these as maybe a prompt to talk about how we've gone through these challenges, the particular effects or repercussions of these challenges, how they've impacted us, and then how we've taken action. So, and as a result, when you take action, you develop certain resources, skills, or values. And then resources, skills, and values help you develop into a better, let's say, person or a better version of what you were before. So use these challenges as a means of showing and showcasing. So the whole show and tell thing that I talked about before, that use these challenges not extensively, but where you feel like they add a nice touch to your narrative about how they give the admissions committee or the scholarship committee insight into you as a person. And of course, it's a long, I would say, activity. It takes time. It takes a lot of honesty within your own, for your own sake as well, because a lot of times we don't even realize that we down really thinking about it, that we really grasp the meaning of it. So I would suggest that sort of like you start making those connections and those connective threads between challenges and the values you've learned in the process of and then using that to maybe make the narrative of your state. Um, can you hear me? Sorry, I think it's breaking up. Okay.
Yeah, we had a little bit of disconnection, but I think we're good now. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's see. In our when it comes to language, I think it's important that we should be objective in our statement, but it should also be self-revelatory. So write directly and in a straightforward manner. A lot of times, I've seen statements where students write like purple prose, which is just them using a lot of big words and fancy words to make sure that we understand that they know English, but that's not really important. What's important is that you're able to communicate, uh, your statement in a way which is easy to understand and straightforward. You don't want to use a lot of jargon. You don't want to use a lot of academic sounding words because, again, it's going to be a panel which is diverse. So try to make sure that you write it for a very general audience. You should
I was
also.
going to just add that I was that person who started off with a very lofty paragraph of introduction, oh dear God, did I not get admission at places? Of course. Because they're not looking for you. They're not looking for you to write a thesis in there, right? They're looking to get to know you as a person. So yeah, I completely agree with you that you need to showcase who you are and not this, facade of linguistic barriers that you're putting in between yourself and the committee. Please don't do that. I reviewed a couple of personal statements that I just had to brutally chop off the intros with, sounds very superficial.
It does.
And yeah, so
Yeah,
we
no,
we just. Mhm.
I think because, um, and I understand the need for this, right? I mean, I know that as students, we're so, there's definitely this level of competition that you feel that maybe this is what would set you apart. But what it ends up doing, in my opinion, is that it sort of like shows the other person that you aren't really as comfortable in your skin as you're maybe trying to appear, and there's this definite disconnect between what you're pretending to, right? So it's always, and I know, okay, we think, this is a person who's like 7,000 miles away or wherever, and they don't know the real me. But that's what the statement of purpose is there for, right? So for you to connect through paper with someone who's never met you, but you're trying to explain to them and show them why you're a great candidate for this position, for being admitted into this particular program.
Mhm.
Uh, so yeah, so I think again, depending on language, also on the conclusions and the values and explanations that you really talk about. So maybe connecting your field to what you've learned about yourself, also your future goals and your career concerns. These are things that you might want to talk about in your statement of purpose, because again, you want to use your education towards the development of a possible career. Um, and it's always great if you're able to make that connection for the committee yourself. You should also be specific. So, if when you're documenting your conclusions or specific instances it's of or draw your conclusions as a result of individual experience, um, maybe like not use just generic words that you think sound great, and maybe sort of like back them up by using explanations that give them better insight. Like for instance, you're writing a very persuasive piece of writing. Yeah, you know how persuasive essays work. So it's basically that. But it's in a way that you're telling a story without um, making it sound like a fake or a fictional story. So use vivid language, be specific, be dynamic. And I know these words right now sound that oh yeah, these are just words, but it really does show through when you're writing, and that's why I always emphasize that everyone works on multiple drafts. I think that's so important because काफी दफा ये होता है कि हमें लगता है कि हम एक दफा बैठ के we'll just write it down and then it will just come naturally to us. I mean, for some of us, it might be true. Some people are really great writers, they're really great communicators, and maybe it's true for them. But for the majority of us, it doesn't come naturally, especially when you have to talk about yourself in a way where you feel like you will be judged, right? And that's what's happening. So you know that this is an important piece of uh, statements that you're writing, and on the basis of this, most people will judge whether you get it or not. So of course, there's this definite thing at the back of your head that you have to be really great, but greatness comes through practice. I've come to realize it's all about how many times you sort of like go back and rewrite things. It's very important to rewrite it because otherwise you'll just like be stuck with the first draft and it won't be the best version. You probably end up sending it and not get the answer that you were looking for. So yeah, that's my advice. And also in terms of how sometimes people try to be really funny or slick or glib. I think that yeah, that don't do that. Don't try putting in like like I mean jokes are okay if you're with friends, but not with the academic community, especially people you've never met before. So it's just like I think it's trying to understand the nuance of what you're writing and just being respectful to that process. Um, so yeah, so I guess in terms of let's say if we were to recount, how should your statement of purpose portray you? It should be about you being passionately interested in your field,
Mhm.
uh, hearing intelligence, because of course they want intelligent people to join them. You being well prepared academically and personally. So and showing again through different instances, showing them that you can take on challenges, and especially because grad school is taken as a challenge. It can be very hectic. There are sleepless nights, so they need to know that this person can. Uh, Given that they've done this before or
Yeah.
through either personal or an academic instance, this person is ready to take that challenge on. And then, in other words, be collegial, so be able to finish the graduate degree in a timely fashion. So again, they don't want lazy people. Don't try to portray yourself as someone like that. Try to be someone who is a more heightened or a nuanced version of you. So again, you don't have to be someone if you've never been the best person or the best, academically the best person in class. Don't try to be that like that on your statement of purpose. Tell them why your grades have suffered, or maybe talk to them more about how your career has sort of in a way the trajectory of your career is not dictated by grades as such, but the
Mhm.
skills that you've learned. So I know, like for maybe somebody in English literature, for them there's a certain level of skill sets that are important, but for someone, let's say in biology or mathematics, a completely different skill set is important, right? So use that to position yourself in a way that you appear someone who can take on the challenge of graduate study. Um,
So I
yeah.
have a question here. Sometimes the word that is repetitively heard within the selection committees is yaar ye bahut entitled hai.
Hmm.
What are we doing what are we writing in a personal statement or a statement of purpose that highlights us as being people who are entitled, like कि हम तो बस deserve करते हैं कि आप हमें ये scholarship दे दें.
Yeah, that's true. I think that's a very interesting question also because I feel there's no right answer or a set of right answers to this. Um, I think the sense of entitlement comes because generally we are entitled people. We feel like, because a lot of us, to be honest, like you know this, Ramla, like when you go, we've studied, both of us have studied abroad. We've seen people our age who had to work 2, 3 shifts to
Yeah.
make ends meet, you know. And here we are, our parents, most of us, our parents are paying for our studies, right? So there's this general sense of entitlement that does exist.
Hmm.
So, but what we can do around that is maybe be a more like a better civic participation, maybe within our own communities. So I feel like that's where your apart from your academic work, your extracurriculars really play a role because they tell this person on the admissions committee that this person is not just interested in what's in the classroom but also outside. So this person has an active interest in building better communities. And especially if you're someone who's, let's say, going for public policy or subjects like these, it's good to have that angle to you because it tells them that this person is already interested in ensuring that we have a better, um, you know, communities which are better connected, interlinked, and you can show this through your work. So again, it's not as much about the kind of things that you're writing, but more about the experiences that you're drawing from. I feel like. And वो यही होता है कि I'm glad कि up to universities में they've made it compulsory for these what do you call them, mandatory sort of like civic
Right.
service, right? Like social service, like either working with a community or an organization that which the cause that you're passionate about primarily,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
I know मेरे time में ऐसा it wasn't compulsory, but I used to do these things on my own because I felt like it just gives you a better understanding and also connecting with people, right? Because the networks are as important as what you're being taught in the end,
Yeah.
especially with grad school and especially even more with PhD. I feel like the networks are definitely more important in that regard. So yeah, so my advice would be honestly to just not look like someone who uh, thinks that just because I managed to, go to school, come back home in one piece, and then give my exams that, I deserve something, but more like, okay, fine, I've been, let's say, and sometimes not all of us have challenges, right? So it's okay. You don't have to feel bad about that. Okay, life has been nice for you. That's okay. But what it means is that maybe get out of your comfort zone and then see, okay, so fine, I've been given this set of opportunities. What can I do with these set of opportunities that sets me apart, not just in the eyes of the admissions committee, but for me as a person as well. Like, that I feel good about myself. That, okay, fine. Um, so yeah, so I think in that regard, my advice is always just to find a lot of different activities that you feel like that. These are things that I enjoy. These are things that I feel I can actively participate in, and then use those as the jumping off point in terms of maybe sticking with one or two causes in the long term.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, and maybe really let your passion shine through in that application. They want to, the admissions committees and scholarship committees really want to know if you're passionate about something and what did you do about that. And please be passionate about good things and let that shine through.
Yeah.
Aja, let's talk a little bit about scholarships for the US are probably some of the most competitive ones because people are applying from across the world and there are tens of thousands of people who are definitely applying every year and then a very select handful get through. Um, what what is a specific timeline that you should follow when you're applying for, let's say, a graduate school scholarship? When is that? I don't know, how many weeks before the deadline should you start writing this
Yeah.
narrative of yourself as a person?
Yeah, I think so. Something that's interesting is that, like unlike Fulbright, because Fulbright is a completely different. You know how they work, right? So
Hmm.
there
Hmm.
are different set of rules for them. But primarily, I think a lot of universities usually, so there are two different, I would say, times in the year when they open the process. And for most universities, they do this for fall admissions, if I'm not
Right.
wrong. And for that, they want. So I would suggest that every have all of your forms and any of the statements that you've been working on, have everything ready at least by, let's say, May, or even before, because that also means that you have to get those letters of recommendation from your advisors. That's sort of like double checking anything that you might have missed, and also something very important, like letting another set of eyes go through your application. So it could be someone you really trust, it could be your supervisor, it could be your parent, it could be a sibling, it could be a friend. But get out of your comfort zone and show it to someone that you trust, because a lot of times, again, as I mentioned, we feel like we know ourselves best, but for us to really shine through on paper, we need to see the other person's side and see, what makes the statement work on. Maybe something that we feel like we've explained, we haven't really. So it's always good to have that other set of eyes to go through your application, just to give you feedback on, in terms of what works and what doesn't work. But I've also seen the flip side of this, where people go to 5 or 6 different supervisors. They get different feedback from all 5 of them, and then they're so confused by the end of it that they can't figure out. So it there's no one correct answer, unfortunately. But it's just sort of like a trial and error, I would say. Just like make it work for you the best way possible. Um, and it all comes down to how much you trust yourself, because a lot of times हम इतने ज़्यादा bogged down हो जाते हैं by oh, maybe we don't know this, that we stop trusting ourselves. So don't do that. Like, you are the best person to write about yourself, of course, but you're also the best person to understand why this application or this scholarship means what it means to you. The other people are just there to, sort of like give you advice or feedback, but don't go out of your way to completely, rewrite all of it, um, because that doesn't really sort of like fall in line with what you were working on in the first place, right? So make sure that jo bhi, whatever you're working on, it's something authentic, it's original. And when you go back, get some any recommendations on maybe changing things around, always be respectful, take it into account, and then work with it in terms of, the structure is still there, maybe, but you're making it a better version, like an editor does with a writer's work, right? So the editing work itself is very important. हम लोग काफी दफा even like exams में हम ये करते हैं, हम सारा कुछ last minute पे लिख के रख देते हैं, and then when we actually go back, we realize it's a big mistake. So that's the issue here, because we're not used to editing our work. Editing is very important, and like, so again, go back, reread your application, reread your statements, make sure there aren't any spelling errors, any grammatical mistakes, because this is the first check, right? The admissions committee thinks that you can't even communicate properly in English, then no matter how brilliant of a student you are, that will definitely show them that this person is not really fit to be part of an academic community of that level. Uh, so yeah, so I think these are some things that whenever we, in terms of applications, something to keep in mind and be really vigilant about.
Okay. One sticky question now.
Okay.
I have noticed this कि काफी लोग चाहते हैं कि कोई और उनका personal statement लिख दे.
Yeah.
It shows अगर किसी और का personal statement लिखा हो. So, but I would like you to shed some light on that. Why is that a bad practice?
So personal experience, I actually was going through someone's personal statement and also their statement of purpose, and they were it felt like it was written by two completely different sets of people, in terms of the language, in terms of the way it was. One was really nicely written, the other one had no structure, had really bad grammar, had spelling errors, and I was wondering, why would someone do this? Like, why would every, like, either आप उसी बंदे से फिर अपनी दूसरी चीज भी लिखवा लेते या फिर आप दोनों चीजें ही लिख लेते, but like that really Of course, like that shows. For sure, that shows. I know people think they can get away with it, but it shows. And secondly, it's like it's really disingenuous, I would say. And I think if you get caught on this in the first place, then like
Yeah.
what's the point of even applying to grad school? Because this is something that you should be comfortable talking about, and you've lived with yourself your entire life. So I'm assuming that you have enough raw material to work with. Imagine grad school where you have 3 or 4 different deadlines in the same day, where you have to really put all of your work and effort into writing original pieces of research that, by the way, can be easily caught if you plagiarize or anything. So why would you even take that risk in the first place? I would strongly discourage people from, employing someone. And I know there are services out there which write it for you. Um, I can't speak for them, but like if you're someone who's considering it, I would strongly discourage you because एक तो apart from the fact it's dishonest, it's also it's putting or jeopardizing your application in the long run. And apart, yeah, so instead of doing that, taking the short turn, maybe take some time to yourself, rewrite again, write the first draft, read it, show it to someone, write the second draft, go back to it, edit it, um, again show it to someone else. So use that process. I would suggest it would
Mhm.
still be more authentic, and I will guarantee that it won't be as bad as you think it is. It's just the other route is something that you like. In my honest opinion, you shouldn't even think about it for your
I
own.
I agree. I totally agree. I mean, there's nothing wrong with asking someone else to edit it for you, or to point out your grammar mistakes in there, or to tell you, okay, your sentence structure does not make sense to me. So could you rework on it? But to ask them to write it from scratch, let's say you asked them to write your entire application for you, and then you went through, let's say this is for a scholarship, you will have an interview, and that's when everything will fall through, because your persona and the persona you projected in the application will not match. And people who are sitting in scholarship committees, that is their job, right? So they see
Yeah,
thousands of people.
of people,
They are
exactly.
exactly, so they have been trained to
Sort
weed
through.
out people, exactly. So they've been trained to sift and look for the people who are really truly deserving. So please don't,
Yeah.
uh, yeah, don't destroy your chances.
Huh. I don't know. Like I feel like, and I wish it was a small percentage, but it's unfortunately there are a lot of people who do that, and yeah, for them, I think just like and up to here, there are so many resources. Like again, from experience, I can tell you that if you're someone who's interested and who has limited resources, because not all of us can take like English tuitions or whatever. But
Mhm.
I think there are things like let's say online MOOCs, so edX and Coursera. They are great places to start if you're someone who wants to maybe get better at English. Use those MOOCs to sort of like teach yourself. So it's a nice way to sort of like teach yourself grammatical English, and then of course, then let's say institutes like the Fulbright or USCFP in Pakistan, they do these sessions, like free sessions for people who are interested, where they guide you through the process of applying to grad school, and then sort of like give you tips on how to write better. So use these resources, and they're free, right? So everyone has an internet connection. Everyone these days has access to either a smartphone, a laptop, or a desktop. So use these resources, and then instead of cheating, I think it's better that you prepare yourself to write something which is authentic and original.
Okay. Um, all right. I think we pretty much covered everything. Is there anything that comes to your mind
Uh,
apart from this? Isn't like something that's US specific?
mhm. US specific. I think that's a big question, right? So in terms of what the culture is like and all of that. But I think one maybe 8 Gs, maybe I might have skipped it. I'm not sure. Just to sort of like in terms of organizing your purpose, statement of purpose. it's always good to sort of start off with a very passionate hook. So a hook isn't something like, yeah, and I don't know, I'm rolling my eyes right now, but there's so many times I feel like people start off with motivational quotes. And there's nothing wrong with motivational quotes, it's just that most of the people do it. So yeah, it's like not really setting yourself apart from it. So I would advise not to start with a motivational quote. Instead, use like how when you're reading a short story or a book, and there's some the first line really, the good ones are always where the first line really hooks you. So that's what you're looking for. You're looking for something that really hooks your reader. So for instance, an example is, let's say if it's somebody starts off with, um, I used to work on an assembly line in a television factory, and one day I decided that I had to get out of this, and I wanted to go to college to save my life. Right? There's nothing wrong with it, but in comparison to this, if you see somebody who starts off with, let's say, something like, one Thursday I had soldered the 112 green wire on the same place on the 112th TV remote, and I realized the solder fumes were rotting my brain. I decided college would be my salvation, or something like that. I don't know, right? So it's like it's the images that you really um, sort of like putting it out there that will grasp the attention or get that hook that you really need. So use that. I mean, you have like what, 500 to 750 words in which you are writing it. So of course you don't want to use or write unnecessary information. But I think the hook is really important because a lot of times these people have to go through 500 applications in one day or like 2 days, and then imagine being on the receiving end of this, like being that grumpy professor who has to go through all of these applications. So make it easier for them and make it more interesting for them, right? In a way which really shines through. So again, so the passionate hook, then you have the segue to your background in the field. So, what is your background in the field? Any specific classes or courses that you've taken prior to this that have increased your interest in this field? Then any related extracurricular activities that you feel like need to be put here, any publications or professional accomplishments in the field, let's say any conference presentations that you've done or any public readings, and then explanations about problems in your background. So again, this is for people who, as I mentioned earlier, maybe took a gap year or had some problems in their academic work that they feel like maybe they can explain here. And always answer this question, which is why you have chosen this particular program or grad school. And if, let's say, there's this a certain professor's work that you enjoy, that and whose research you are interested in exploring further or working with that professor, do mention that as well, especially for people who are applying for PhDs. That's very important. Um, so you can sort of like talk about the specific areas or some features of the program that really attract you. So in the end, the school really wants to know why you picked them, and why they should even consider having you join their program.
Mm-hmm.
For that, you need to show that you've done your homework. So don't just mention names. KG is professor. I know this professor works here. That doesn't really help anyone. Talk
Yeah,
about
name
what.
dropping.
Yeah, name dropping is very bad. That is also, I think, something that we should actively discourage people from doing. No. But yeah, so like make it look like that you've done your homework, that you are really excited about joining this particular grad school, and um, again, use your academic background to sort of like segue into what makes you a good fit for this program. And I think the rest is just a lot of writing and then editing in the end.
Mm-hmm.
So once you have the major ideas down, it's all about how you paint it in a way with words.
All right, I think this pretty much wraps it up. We talked about the structure of the personal statements and the statement of purpose, and we also talked about what distinctly differs between these two. We talked about the timeline that you should follow. We talked about the review process that you should do prior to submitting an application, right? And things that we should not do, should not include as best practices. there are certain things that we should definitely avoid. We talked about the use of vivid language and the need for our passion and courage to really show through. But the most important part of the personal statement would be what you termed as the hook, like starting off not with lofty paragraphs or motivational quotes, but just an interesting hook to who you are as a person, because of course you are an interesting person. You just want them to see that, to see you on paper. And I think, Areej, you did an excellent job to summarize everything the people in the admissions committees are looking for. With that, thank you so much for your time, Areej. I learned a lot sitting here talking to you, because I'm also applying for scholarship for my dissertation year in PhD, and sometimes I also get blank, and that's when these sort of conversations really help. Thank you so much once again for joining us. And if we have any questions from our live audience on Facebook, I'll definitely ping you and ask you, and then we can respond back to them. All right. Thank you so much, and to everyone who's watching, and to everyone who will be watching in the future as well. Thank you so much for joining in. Please feel free to leave any questions you may have in the comment section on the Facebook Live. We do catalog these webinars both on our website and on YouTube. So if in case you cannot find them in the debris that Facebook generates within your timeline, please feel free to log on to www.womenengineers.pk and you will find our webinars there. Thank you so much for your time. Have a great rest of your day. Khuda Hafiz.